Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Sunday chat is following along the theme of there's not much going on. So there's not much to say because there's not much going on. That storm hasn't properly shifted yet. If you listen every now and again you'll hear the roar. The wind is still gusting really hard every now and again. And yet the garden looks still. But the trees are really waggling around. It seems, you know, as I say, it seems to skirt over this garden. But we've got blue sky and sunshine along with it today rather than the misery we had yesterday. I got woken up several times in the night by the wind, but not the rain. There was forecast heavy rain, we didn't get it, which is good. And this coming week doesn't sound too bad. As a consequence, hopefully we'll have some drying going on in the garden, and if that happens, at the first opportunity I shall get the leaf blower out and shift the leaves on the garden part of the garden. I won't attempt to do the patio. I think that's possibly easier to do with the broom actually, because you've got the solid surface underneath. But I'll have a start on doing some clearing up if I get in the mood and it's not too cold. Now, this is the, what's the date now? I've forgotten. This is probably the last normal weekend for a while, although the weekend immediately before Christmas for me is a normal weekend because I'll be here on my own and nobody visiting, and I won't be going out. So Hannah won't be down until Christmas Eve. So. But next weekend I'm out basically, or I'm out all day Saturday. It's got to pick Hannah up. We're going straight to the venue for our Orchid Society's Christmas lunch, and we'll be home late afternoon, I suspect. And then the Sunday Hannah's here anyway, so I doubt if we'll have a Sunday chat next week. So that's that. The videos about picking on a genus or a section of a genus, like a subset, they seem to be going down quite well. I mean, when I mentioned that's the idea I had, a lot of people said it sounded like a good idea, and with the number of views I seem to be getting on those videos, it seems to be working well. So far so good, that's all I can say, and thanks to everybody who's watching those videos. Now, I appreciate there must be, given the numbers, there must be people watching those videos that haven't necessarily got any of those orchids. That is appreciated, because I can see how you might sort of think, oh, brassicas, I haven't got any of them, I won't watch it. But they seem to be going down quite well. There will be more of those. They won't be every day, and they will vary, going around the types of orchids I've got. I mean, we've still got several different types of dendrobiums to go over. I mean, one of those sets of dendrobiums has only got 2 plants in it, you know, so I'll probably combine it with another set that's only got 1 in it, and at least we'll have 3 then. Their care is actually incredibly similar, so that would work. You know, so as I say, it seems to be going along okay. We've got the different types of oncidiums to look at. Yeah, and I'm enjoying doing it as well. I know it sounds strange, but it's a refresher for me. I don't plan them as such. I might need to do a little look up on the internet as far as names are concerned, you know, where I've got a hybrid. Sometimes I'll go and look up what went into that hybrid to go in the pop-up. But a lot of the time when I do that, I then update my notes. So obviously I've then got that information permanently. Save doing it again. But yeah, they don't get planned as such. But it might not seem like it. But while I talk like this, I'm racking my brains. So when I'm doing that sort of thing on the genus, I'm really going through all the nooks and crannies of this cobweb place up here, the dim and dark and the dark corners, to drag all the information I've got out. Now, I know a lot of people do that off camera and make notes, and they might not realise it, but it's, to me, it's blatantly obvious they're reading it. Or they're working from a set of notes. I don't do that. The only time I have notes is if I have to have a list of something, because those sort of things I don't remember very well. Yeah, so that's that. Well, that's types of videos. There will be other things involved. I mean, given the words that I said in the last video about timing and repotting, if you appreciate what I was saying, that's going to lead into the subject matter for today, where I'll go round in a circle on a topic. And basically, it's based on not much going on. And if there's not much going on, why are you busy? So that's the topic, really. Now, we'll split ourselves into two groups. We've got those that are growing their orchids in their home, and I'm talking winter time. I won't put months on it, because obviously we've got the bottom half of the world that are probably coming, you know, they're coming up to their spring, I would think, or their summer even. So different parts of the world will be in different seasons. So I'm talking about winter time. Yeah. Now, if you're near the equator, winter time doesn't really happen, does it? You get shorter days, yes, and you might get a drier season, but you don't get distinct seasons like I get here and other places that are in similar latitudes, either north of the equator or south of the equator. There's a band, you know, which get distinct seasons, and I'm in that band. What does appear strange to me is we're rapidly heading towards the shortest day. Yeah? Well, that is, in theory, midwinter, but in this country it's not. It's not. It is technically midwinter, it's the shortest day. But if you take the 2 months leading up to it, the weather and the conditions in those 2 months are not that bad. But they are going to be bad in the following 2 months, because you're into January and February. That's our coldest period. That's often when we get the bad snow, we get the northerly winds. We don't get those in the 2 months leading up to it, which means there's still an amount of activity going on with our orchids. Now, if you grow in the home, then you come into a different group, because unless you are really of a hardy sort and are quite happy sitting around in your, you know, hat, gloves and scarf in the house, then the chances are you've got some central heating going on, or some form of heating, even if it's only in a couple of rooms. So the chances are your orchids are in much better temperatures than mine are, even if you don't heat the house up to a, you know, up to tropical heat sort of thing. It's going to be much better than out here. I mean, out here today, with the lounge door open, it's 16. That would not be very comfortable in the house, would it? Not. Might be okay while you're bustling around, but not if you were sitting down relaxing or having a meal or something. 16's a bit nippy, and that's going to drop down to 13 as soon as I shut that door, because there's no heat coming in from outside. Temperature outside at the moment is probably about 10, maybe 12, so it doesn't have an effect on this that's got a minimum of 13. In fact, the effect it has is to allow heat to escape. Now, we've had a little thing with the weather, with the storm. All the leaves on the roof are gone. They're all in the garden now. It's a pity it didn't take all the moss with it. We've still got the big blobs of moss up there. And I have noticed this morning that there is a distinct difference. This V shape here, all the panels of glass within that V shape are badly covered in algae. Yeah? They get the sun in the summer, and that generates the algae. These panels up here have got blobs of moss off the roof. They haven't got algae all over them, but I do have a method of cleaning the roof that's not too exhausting. I haven't done it since I've had the old ticker trouble, but it involves putting the steps up against the edge of the conservatory and getting up there with the hose and the long-handled broom, and basically just hosing the panels so that they're wet, and then giving them a good brush with the broom and then hosing them off to rinse them. And it's quite quick and it's quite easy. So we'll have to get round to doing that at some point. And this time of year would be a good time to get the roof clean. Not because I'm going to start collecting rainwater, that's not happening, but it would let more light in, yeah, on the days when they're very short and light levels can be quite low. So if you're in the house, you've got better temperatures, but you haven't got the light unless you use artificial lighting. Even in a window, you haven't got the same light as here, where I've got light coming in from 3 sides and, more importantly, above. In a home you don't get that. I mean, there are some types of bay windows that perhaps have an open top, but not very often. So unless you're conservatory or greenhouse, then you don't tend to get the light the same as this. But you've got the temperatures. Unfortunately, one without the other doesn't do much. So, why are we not busy then? Well, we're not busy out here because, like I said, there's not much going on, and by that I mean there's not a lot of growing going on. Now, there could be buds and spikes doing some stuff, but they don't need a lot of work. My Cymbidium spikes, if I didn't water these plants for a month, those spikes would still develop. What they will do is drain the resources of the connected bulbs closest to them. So those bulbs would start to lose their strength. Yeah? But the leaves will still be photosynthesizing to help replenish it. Yeah? The roots could start to dry out and frazzle. Yeah? In which case, when I do get round to watering them, the roots wouldn't be as functional, but they'd still work. Yeah? It'd be difficult to dry these pots out totally in the humidity and the low temperatures I've got. So I could go a month without watering those Cymbidiums and the spikes would still develop, buds would still open. Yeah? And that applies across the board, with a few exceptions. And the exceptions really are those without bulbs. So like my Paphiopedilums, I've got a nice bud about to open on that one. If that one doesn't get any water, that bud will either not open and fail or open and not last long, because the plant doesn't store resources, it expects to get topped up. Yeah? Same with the Phalaenopsis, which a lot of people will have. They don't store much. So if they dry out for any length of time, the leaves will start going limp. And on Phalaenopsis, if the leaves go limp, sometimes they just won't plump up. And they end up going yellow and falling. So those shouldn't dry out for any length of time. Now, if my Phalaenopsis were out here, they'd need to be watered about probably about 6 or 7 days, but then after 6 or 7 days there probably wouldn't be any point in watering them because they'd probably be dead because it's too cold. That's why they're not out here, they're in the kitchen. Now in the kitchen, if we get a really cold night, you know, where it's down below freezing, the kitchen will go down to 15 degrees overnight. But it takes a while to get down there, yeah? You know, I mean, obviously the house isn't freezing cold when I go to bed in the evening, mid-evening, and that heat will hang around for a while until eventually you get to the smaller hours and the heat starts to leach away. But then I'm up very early in the day. I'm usually up sometimes as early as 3:45, 4 o'clock. 5 o'clock would be a bit of a lie-in in my case, and there's a good reason for that. It's called mojo, and there's nothing I can do about it. He yowls and fusses because he wants his breakfast and he wants to go out. And the combination of those two things means he just will not stop pestering. So it's easier to just get up and deal with it. So I do. And like this time of year, I get up, put my dressing gown on, press the button and the heating comes on. So the kitchen's only been down at that lower temperature, which is not suitable for Phalaenopsis, for a couple of hours, and only on the coldest nights. Yeah? On normal nights, you know, where it only drops down to sort of 4 or 5 or 6 or something like that, it'll only go down to 16, 17 in the kitchen. And then again, it's only for a short time. So my phals do okay in the kitchen. I've only got one species out there, all the others are the more complex hybrids. And those complex hybrids have been bred to be houseplants, as near as possible like the other houseplants. Consequently, they don't need the high humidity. It's been bred out of them. Their fussiness has gone away. So the humidity in the kitchen is probably the best humidity in the house, probably, apart from perhaps the bathroom, because the kettle gets boiled quite a lot for this stuff. Yeah? And I mean quite a lot. 2, 3, 4, 5. That's number 6 today, and the time is, whatever it is, about 10:45. Yeah, and that's number 6. There won't be too many more because I stopped drinking coffee around lunchtime. Yeah, the kettle gets boiled quite a bit. I do my cooking out there, which involves steam, you know, and things like that. So there's reasonable humidity in the kitchen. They're in a windowsill scenario facing north. So they've got the brightest light you can get in a north-facing window without touching the glass. So they've got, for Phalaenopsis, more than enough light. What they don't get is that light for any length of time. That's called winter. That's the bit that they suffer from. And if they've only got short days, that's the only time when they can do some growing. And if that time is short, they don't do much growing. It slows right down. So even if I had 24, 25 degrees in the kitchen, with that amount of light, they're still not going to grow much. There's not much going on. Now take the other types. Let's come back out here now, back into a more orchid type place that others might have, or something similar. Now obviously you've got your minimum temperature and your maximum, and unless you use artificial lights, I'm ignoring artificial lights because I'm not using them. I have done, I'm not using them anymore. So it's natural day length and natural daylight that these get. And they don't get much of it this time of year. You know, they're lucky to get 7 hours, because although the day might be 8 hours long, technically it's not. Because the first half an hour, maybe even more than that, and the last bit of the day is useless for growing. The light level's far too low. So there's not much growing going on. Yeah. And if there's not much growing going on, there's not a lot of point in pouring lots of water and feed in the pot, is there? What's it going to do with it? It's not going to use it, is it? It can't. It hasn't got the temperature, and it hasn't got the light level or the day length. It can't do much growing. The plants are not far off dormant. They are just about ticking over. And my watering and feeding has been already done, adjusted accordingly. You know, I water in sets. I've got my cooler, shadier set, as I call them. That's my Miltoniopsis, my Odonts, my Restrepias, my Masdevallias. That's my cooler, shadier set. They're currently on about an 11 or 12 day watering cycle, and they don't get feed. They might get 1 feed in 3, but add together 3 of those watering cycles and work out how often they're getting fed. Yeah? So they're not getting much feed. By the time we get to the next feed, we will be the other side of Christmas. By the time they get another feed, we'll probably be into February. That's the rate which they're getting fed. That's one set. Cymbidiums are a separate set. They get watered a bit more frequently because they're quite tight in their pots, so they do dry, and they are still maturing bulbs. they're still pushing out leaves in places, and they've got spikes growing. So they are still doing stuff. And for them, it's their time. So despite the short days, they seem to manage to keep going during the winter. They do slow down a bit, they're not putting on the growth like they did outside back in the summer and autumn, but they are still doing stuff. So they get watered a bit more often. And at the moment they get fed every single watering. But they're getting fed with this bloom fertiliser, as it's called. It's basically a low nitrogen, high phosphorus feed. So I mean, what you would call an average feed would be something like 10-10-10, you know, NPK, or 20-20-20. That's effectively that's exactly the same, except for with the 20-20-20 you're not paying for so much padding. Yeah, so you're going to pay more because there's more proper stuff in there, not so much padding. But it's, you water that down and use your TDS meter, I would hope, or measuring, whatever, to bring it down to a level suitable for orchids. So it doesn't matter how strong you start out with your feed, you bring it down to the level you want. I mean, if I started with a 20-20-20 and I mixed it and used my TDS meter to get it down to, say, 150 parts per million, well, that's no different to using a 10-10-10 and getting it down to 150 parts per million. What I end up with is the same. What I start with is a price dependent item. The stronger the feed, the more you'll pay for it, basically. So yeah, so I'm using a low nitrogen feed that helps boost the production of the spikes, the buds and the blooms. And if it does what it's supposed to do, we should get better blooms that are larger and brighter, better colouring, if it does its job. And we will compare it with the photos taken last year. Now the one that I had that I didn't have a picture of, I thought, I'm getting fed up with not having this picture. When I bought it, I must have filmed it. So I went back, had a look in my notes. I got it in Burnham's in October. So I went back through my videos. They're all still there, right back to my very first ever video on YouTube. On my channel, all of the videos are still there, apart from a couple I've had to take down. And that is only a couple as well. One I got told to take down, and two or three I've taken down voluntarily. But apart from that, they're all still there. So you can go back and have a look at my very first one if you want. Nerve-wracking that was. But yeah, so I went back to around October when I bought it from Burnham's and found the video where I unwrapped it. Yeah? And then basically I waited for the video to get in a reasonably nice position showing the blooms, and I just did a screen print. And then I took that into my photo editor and cut off all the rubbish, cropped all the rubbish from around the outside, you know, all the window stuff, leaving a picture of the bronze hybrid for future reference. So we've got a picture now, so we can compare, because that is what it was like then. Yeah. So we will do that. And that will be the one that will have the first comparison, because that's the one that's got the buds and the 3 large spikes. So that will be the first one that we have a look at to see whether this fertiliser is doing its stuff. Right, so that was that set. My Phalaenopsis are a separate set because they're in the house. They get watered a bit more frequently, about every 6-7 days, something like that. And that will depend on how much I've had to have the heating on to keep me and Mojo warm. Yeah? On the milder periods, you know, I have the heating on in the morning, then I shut it down until sort of later in the day when I've finished mucking around and I want to sit down quietly and relax. And once I do that, I don't tend to do much after that, because guess who jumps straight on my lap and goes to sleep? So we both ended up relaxing. He still likes sitting on my lap in the evenings. But he really does like his blanket. He's on his blanket now and there's some watery sun coming through the window, which will change his temperature, so he won't be moving much till the sun moves off. The sun's coming and going, basically. It's starting to go hazy out there. Yes, so that's the Phalaenopsis set. They get fed most times when they're watered because they are growing. In the main, we've got new leaves coming and new roots. No, they're not growing as well as they did back in the longer days, but they are growing a bit, so they get fed most times when I water them. And as I said, their frequency is quite high because they're in the warm. You know, like me, I get fed and watered quite frequently when I'm in the warm. I'm starting to have to fidget out here because it's not very warm out here. And then we've got the set, which is all the rest of my pots, basically. So that's going to be the Dendrobiums, the Oncidiums, a couple of Cattleya types, my Paphiopedilums, my Miltonias. It's the rest, and a few odds that don't come into those. They all get watered the same. The amount they get at each watering varies by looking to see what each pot needs. In the summertime, I don't bother so much with that, they just get soaked. Because they're going to use it, it's warm in here, we've got the long days, everything's moving, everything's up and running. So, yes, so that's set. They're currently on about a 10-day cycle, 9, 10, and a lot of that depends on what that's doing outside. Yeah? Because if it's cold, and the day temperatures are still cold, that door stays shut, and the heater even kicks in during the day. So they're not getting a difference between their day and night, and those that were running slow will probably end up stopping if that goes on for too many days. So that means there's even less going on than if we were in a mild spell, which we do get in the winter. But a lot of the time in the winter, when we get the mild spells, it's drizzly and overcast. So the light level drops down. So again, it might be a bit warmer for them in the daytime, but they've lost their light. So there's still not much going on. And like I said, if there's not much going on, then you shouldn't be busy. Simple as that. And it is quite important. More orchids are lost through being watered too often with too much than any other thing. That's the thing that kills more orchids, more than bugs, more than viruses, more than not repotting very well, more than not necessarily choosing an ideal media. All of those things lose some orchids, yes, but getting that watering wrong loses more than all of those put together, I would assume. Yeah? I've lost more orchids through losing root systems than anything else. And it's taken me quite a while to just, it's been 6 days, I need to water the orchids. No you don't, no you don't, no you don't, 3 times. And then walk back in there and don't do it. So really, really watch your watering during these winter months. And adjust according to your conditions. As I said, if you're growing in the home, then you've got some temperatures, but you know, you might not have good light. See now, if I had some orchids in the lounge window now, they'd be in full sun. Brilliant for about 2 hours before the sun goes behind the trees. So by the time they put their sunglasses on, it'd be time to take them off again. So it wouldn't do them a lot of good. And I can't put them there because there's a radiator under the window. There's a radiator under every window in this house except the bathroom and the kitchen. And the window in the bathroom is that wide. 2 orchids at most. So I don't bother basically, but I get quite a few on the kitchen with my double, you know, with the shelf that I included. I could do that in the bathroom, I suppose, put a couple of shelves up and get some plants in. But the sort of plants that would appreciate those warmer, brighter temperatures, because that's a south-facing window, it's frosted glass, but it would still be incredibly bright. And there's a heated towel rail in there, and there's moisture in there, obviously it's a bathroom. So, you know, I could grow a few I could put a few cattleyas in there, they might be happy, who knows. But I don't, because it's just somewhere else I've got orchids where I've got to go to, bring them down here, take them back up again, so I don't. It would only be a couple anyway, so I just don't bother. So, as I said, it's important this time of year to not think about what's sticking out the top of the pot, but seriously think about what you don't see necessarily, what's down below ground. And if your plant that's above ground is not doing anything and not growing anything, then what's below ground is very fragile and will succumb to being wet when it shouldn't be. So you really have got to watch your watering. And like I said, if there's not much going on above ground, then what do you keep chucking feed in there for? What's it going to do with that? It'll just build up. Oh, that wind roaring again. That's just the noise through the trees and over the roofs. You know, there's not much going on in the garden. The buddleia's moving a little bit, the bamboo's bent over at the top. It's still blowing quite a bit out there. It's deceptive because looking out the front through that window now, it's bright sunshine. Mojo's got his sunny spot. But I can see the shadows of the trees in the distance and they're like that. So it is still blowing, but it should blow over by tonight. Get a quiet night, get a bit more sleep perhaps. So, watch your watering and feeding. More so now than probably any other time. See how it just swings round? That moved the roof, that gust. And that's the first gust we've had since I turned that camera on. Now it's gone again. So at that point, the direction must have moved slightly and it came in here, hit the house, and it spirals round when it hits the house. It's a corner basically, next door's house and my house, full height. Yeah? So when it gets in here, it can't get out. So it waggles the conservatory around. That was quite a gust. All the panels on the roof moved. They're still there. That's good. But yeah, it's still blowing a bit out there. And 2 people lost their lives. Trees landed on their cars. Well, I think one was a van, so 2 people got crushed by trees. There's severe flooding in many places. There was, I forget what they said, 60,000 people without power in Wales. Wales have had it bad. They've had the floods, they've had the gales, they've had the power cuts, they've had the lot there. Yeah, so quite a bad storm, quite a bad one. And the other thing you have to remember is we're into December now. Storm season is from now till early spring. And this is our 4th named storm already. 2 of them were damaging storms as well. Bert and now Dara, 2 damaging storms. And the other 2 did damage as well, just not quite so much perhaps. They didn't have the rain with them, just the wind. But yeah, and as I said, this is the 4th one. We're only into December. So they're becoming more frequent. And there's an obvious reason why. The oceans are getting warmer. You can say what you like about how that's happening. That's down to some science possibly, or your own opinion or whatever, but it is true they are warmer than they have been, and when that happens they give off more moisture. They put more energy into the air and more moisture, and that produces more storms. So we're going to get more whether we like it or not. Chances are the other end of the spectrum is in the summer months we'll get more heat waves, we'll get more long dry periods. Combinations of the 2. So it's changing noticeably, and with me in my mind it's changing faster. the rate of change seems to be increasing. And it's relatively sudden in weather terms, you know. I don't need to go back 50 years and do a comparison with what it was like then. I can go back 10 years and make a comparison. Now in, you know, those sort of arenas, that's pretty rapid. Yeah. We've got it, whether we like it or not. Who knows? If I could live long enough, I might be growing outside one day. That'll be the day. Bad enough bringing the cymbidiums back in with all the wildlife that comes in with them. But, that wasn't as bad as I was expecting this year, I must admit. We did have a few slugs and a few snails, not many, and spiders was the other thing that I brought back in. One of them had some brown scale, which those are easily got rid of compared with the white scale, the plastic valve. They're a nuisance to get rid of. But the brown scale, you know, the spray and manually rubbing them off, all the ones I could see got manually rubbed off, the plant got sprayed, they haven't come back. So that's good. That is also good because Hannah's plant was in a totally different place in the garden. Scale would not transfer that distance between plants. But this one here that looks like it might have the virus as well was touching other plants. Now if the brown scale had transferred from that plant to some of the others, that could have transferred the virus. But that's not the one that had the brown scale on it, luckily. So that's something else, you know, if you've got a virus plant, bugs will transmit it because it transmits via fluids, basically, so damaged tissue, so, you know, holes in leaves, bite marks, broken roots, cut leaves, all the sort of places where it can get in and be held on something. As I said, most of the time a virus is transmitted by us through not sterilising tools and pots and things like that, you know, not starting clean. So we can do without them, no flipping cure. There's, you know, yeah, Elon Musk, put some money to good. Whole orchid collections, including unique rare plants, the only surviving ones in cultivation when they've become extinct in the wild, and they get virus and they die out. You know, put some money into research and work out a cure for orchid viruses. Yeah, do some flipping good with your money for a change. You've got enough of it. Always makes me laugh when you work out that these richest people, that, you know, it's incomprehensible the amount of wealth they have. Now obviously a lot of that wealth can't be spent, it's tied up in properties and businesses and things. You can't spend that, can't put that money in your pocket and go to the supermarket with it, can you? It's wealth, there's a difference, but it can be, you know, transferred into cash to spendable stuff. You can't live long enough to spend it, can you? You know, what are you going to do with it all? And no, they don't stop, do they? They don't think, oh, I've got more than enough now. Let's just relax and do a bit of spending instead of accumulating more and more and more. No, they won't stop, will they? It's like a disease. Must have more. Well, I wouldn't mind some of it. Relax a bit more then. Anyway, that'll do. We've gone into the waffle mode, and it's in danger of creeping into politics, and we don't want to get there, do we? I do try and avoid it, but it just, I do sneak in there now and again. It's not planned, I can assure you, so we won't do it today. What we will do, though, is our own internal politics. What we will do is thank everybody for supporting the channel in whatever way you see fit. I will go over the ways. First of all, the one thing I keep forgetting to do on my thank yous is remind people that I do have a Facebook group dedicated to orchids that was set up for people to go and share stuff that you can't do on YouTube unless you make videos. Yeah, you can't post a photo on YouTube, but you can on Facebook. So if you've got like a problem with an orchid, you can take a few pictures, go to the Facebook group and post them, and ask for some help or some advice, and you'll get it. Not from me, rarely from me, but there are some really good long-term experienced growers on Facebook that are only too willing to help. And those that offer pretty rubbish advice will get told by those good experienced growers. Not in a nasty way, we don't have any of that nonsense, not like some Facebook blinking groups. But it is a group, you do have to ask permission to join it. There is a question when you get there, and if you don't answer the question, you don't get in. And if the answer to the question has my YouTube channel in part of the answer, you're in, because I sent you there, so why would I refuse you entry? But the sort of people that don't get in are people that are members of 900 groups. Well, you can't be dealing with all of those groups, can you? So your contribution would be negligible, if any. So I'm not interested in those sort of people. And I usually have a quick look to see what other groups people are members of, and if there's an orchid or plant related one in there, then okay, yeah, you're in. I'd like people to go there to become part of it, but that's just a reminder that it's there. And all the other things that I'll mention, the reminder is that all the links to these places are in the descriptions of all of the videos, not just on this one. It's a set piece as far as I'm concerned. You know, that piece of text that lives under the description, I type a bit at the top relevant to this video, and the rest of it is just loaded automatically. So all of those links are there. And that's the links to the Facebook group that I've just mentioned. The links to my Patreon site, you can become a patron. What else is on there? Oh, the Buy Me a Coffee link for that sort of one-off donation if you fancy doing that sort of thing. So all those links are there. And obviously the Patreon and the Buy Me a Coffee and the membership of the actual channel, they're all financial support, so they're like a regular donation. The Buy Me a Coffee is a one-off. Yeah. And there's also the super chats, you can do that if you know how. I'm sure I even know how to do that. Yeah. Now here's a test for you. If somebody can come up with the right answer, they can have 1,000 useless Roger points. Back in the air show days, there's a site that I follow a lot, military aircraft. But the guy was down in Bournemouth on a hotel balcony filming the Bournemouth Air Show over the 3 or 4 day period. And I wanted to be able to leave comments. And leaving comments from Roger's Orchids, it didn't seem right. So I wanted to have a more useful name. So I set up an email address, a Gmail address, because you have to do that. And then basically a channel to go with it. I never wanted to use the channel, I just wanted to be able to leave comments. And that's what a lot of you have done if you think about it. Your channel has got no content, you just use it so that you can go and view other people's stuff and leave comments. Well, that's what I wanted to do with this one. And in the end, I'd enjoyed that time watching that live so much that I decided to become a member. A lot of thumping going on. So I joined on a monthly subscription. Now there's not so much going on that channel anymore, and I don't begrudge the subscription, but I think I might actually cancel that and perhaps put that money somewhere else. And I've forgotten what the email was that I created, so I can't get in to that channel and cancel my membership. Now I can see the deduction in my bank account, there's no information. I've tried emailing the channel owner to say what my problem is and roughly when I joined and could he have a look, and the email name would be something like this. No response. I can't get out of it. I can't cancel it. And because it's effectively taken by YouTube for that channel, I can't even get the bank to stop it. So if you've ever got yourself in this situation to manage to get out of it, it's my own fault for not writing down the flipping email address. And I've tried using the Google recovery stuff, that doesn't work. Because obviously when I created that channel, I probably had to put my mobile phone number in. And you can use Google to find all of your Google accounts that are associated with a phone number. Well, that didn't come up with it, so that don't work very well. It didn't even come up with one of mine. So Google's pretty useless at helping out. But, well, they don't like helping, do they? They just like taking money. So anyway, I got myself stuck. Never mind, it's not a large amount. So anyway, your support for this channel is greatly appreciated, and I hope you feel like you get something for it. Like I've said in the past, this is my hobby. This is my job. I treat it as a job, and it gets the normal sort of mindset that goes with a job. Needs to be done most days. Needs to be done as well as I can. You know, reasonable camera, reasonable quality, pop-ups and pictures where necessary. You know, all that sort of thing. I take it seriously. So, but I just don't plan it. Just stick the camera up and waffle away. That it seems to work okay. People like what I do in the main. So thanks for all that. Thanks for your subscriptions. Thanks for all the other things you do. Thanks for the thumbs up that if you haven't done yet on this video, you're just about to do, aren't you? I'll find out where you live. But it is appreciated, and it does help the channel. The channel grows slowly but surely with your help. So on that, I think we'll give it a rest for today, and I can get this processed and get it loaded, and that's today done. Tomorrow won't have an orchid video, it's my day off. I might do something out in the garden or with one of my bonsai or something like that, so that there is a video, but it won't be an orchid video. Those will resume again on Tuesday with something as yet to be decided. There's an awful lot of banging and thumping going on. But that doesn't mean something's broken loose somewhere. Might be a dustbin blowing around. Could be. I mean, that's what they said, you know, when they said the storm is dangerous. It's things like that, you know, where the wind catches an empty dustbin and just blows it up the road, you know, straight into the windscreen of a car coming along with a family with little kids in, you know, swerves off the road and it's another parked vehicle or something. You know, this is the sort of thing that can happen when the winds are that strong, as well as taking trees down. Fence panels flying across the road, you know, it picks stuff up and throws it around. So, and if you get caught in that, you know, fence panel travelling at 30 miles an hour, it's going to do you some damage basically. So I did what they told us to do. I stayed in. I didn't have a reason to go out really, so I was okay. But you know, some people, despite the advice, they've still got to travel. They've still perhaps got to get to work. You know, so things like that. Anyway, I will see you next time. Thanks for dropping by, and watch that watering and feeding this time of year. It's important. If you want to take your plants through and bring them out at the other end into the growing season in a reasonable state, that with still a reasonable root system so that they've got a good start, then the work doesn't get done now, it stops getting done now. Don't be busy. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by.